All private assets are in danger of being transferred to becoming the property of a few large private banks in the next financial crash. The laws have been changed nationally and internationally behind the public's back to make this expropriation possible. High-ranking financial insider David Webb explains and documents on how this was able to happen in his recently published book, The Great Taking. What's more, the most devastating financial crash of all times is just around the corner. In plain language, everyone could lose everything in the very near future. But David Webb also sees a chance and presents a viable way out. Watch his presentation in the following.
My name is David Webb. I live in Stockholm, Sweden. I was managing public equities and ultimately hedge funds through the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis, the lead up to the dot-com bubble and bust. As a boy, I went through basically the beginning of the industrial collapse of Cleveland. And I grew up with a real need to understand what was destroying us, because it deeply affected my family, which had been very happy prior to this, a happy, benevolent family, and it literally destroyed the place where I grew up. So I decided to study business and finance. I think I am different than other people in this financial world because I actually don't care about the money. I was always driven by understanding things, and that actually gave me an advantage. I understood things that other people didn't. So in 2008, I noticed the first failure of a broker-dealer. And the thing that shocked me was that the client accounts in this broker-dealer were encumbered in the bankruptcy estate of the broker. That never could have happened before. In all of the history of securities, they were personal property. So I started digging into what could possibly have changed. That's when I discovered it had been done through changes to the Uniform Commercial Code in the United States. This had been done in all 50 states. So it was something that could be done very quietly over a long period of time and did not have to be done at the federal level, didn't draw attention. What they did was to create a new legal construct of a security entitlement. Then there was, in 2005, a change to the bankruptcy law in the United States, creating something called safe harbor. Again, that sounds nice, but what safe harbor means is safe harbor for the secured creditors to take the client assets and to make that absolutely certain that even in the event of fraud, they will take the client assets. It is only the very biggest banks that are entitled to take the client assets. So they don't want anyone else elbowing in there to take anything. Only they will take them. The system has been changed so that the property itself is then transferred up to a higher level and held in pooled form, especially in a crisis, to be swept to meet the collateral demands of the system, the secured creditors. And when that happens, the people that thought that they had hedged their exposure, included the most sophisticated institutions and the pension funds, will have no protection. And the secured creditors will take all of the underlying stocks and bonds, which then gives them control of all public corporations. They've engineered this so they can take things, all securities, as collateral from people and entities that have no borrowings against them. They own them clear and outright. Now, let me give you an example as an analogy to explain the horror of this. So you have bought a car and you paid cash for it. You think you're being very conservative. You have no debt against the car. But unbeknownst to you, the dealer continues to control your car as collateral. You're not told this. The dealer uses your car and all the other cars sold by the dealer as collateral for his borrowing in his business. Now, the dealer goes bust, and only certain secured creditors are empowered to immediately take your car and all the cars ever sold by the dealer without any judicial review immediately. When I describe this to people, they get worried about their cars. This is not about your car. This is an analogy for what has been done. It's much worse than this being about your car, because it is literally about the entire securities complex globally. So it is not about your insolvency that causes the loss of your assets. It's the insolvency of the people that secretly used your collateral as their property without telling you that or disclosing it. It's an elaborate story. So yes, they have changed law. They changed it in the Uniform Commercial Code. This was beginning in 1994. So there's a plan that's executed over decades to do this. Then they began a process of harmonization, which was to force this model in law globally. And they did this through the EU. The first discussion in documents in the EU is in 2002. So that's when the process was beginning then, in the aftermath of the dot-com bust. And the EU created something they called the Legal Certainty Group. And again, that sounds like a good thing, but what they mean is legal certainty that the secured creditors will take the client assets. It's like a game of Monopoly where all of the pieces, all of the money on the board are pulled back to the bank, and then they say, let's start a new game. And we'll start over from the basis that we have everything and you don't. So would you like to borrow something? And this is what the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, will be. It will be very difficult for people to refuse to use it because they literally won't be able to eat. And that's why it's so important to spread this awareness of this beforehand so that people understand what is happening, and so that people can become engaged in this all the way to the top of the system. It has the potential to activate very capable people all the way to the top of the system. It has the potential to unify people against this. So there is a head of the snake, but it can't do anything alone. It is reliant on the muscle beneath the head of the snake to do everything for it. And that part of the purpose of this is to push this awareness up to that muscle. So everybody has to get busy with this, including people who believe that they are powerful and they can make a difference. And it needs to be done legally, it needs to be opposed through legal means. I mean, imagine what would happen if judges in important positions become aware of this, prosecutors. This has never really been examined in terms of how it can be dismantled. And there will be ways to do this because it is just a construct.